Good afternoon, the Committee on Water and Land. We're convening here in conference room 229, and today is Friday, March 18th, the 1 p.m. agenda. We're convening and this hearing is being streamed live online. We will be taking testimony from folks who are in person and online as well. In the event we are cut off due to technical difficulties, we'll have to abruptly end this hearing and reconvene to discuss any outstanding business at the end of our agenda on Monday, March 21st, starting at 1 p.m. And as the chair always says, hopefully that won't happen. So good afternoon, everyone. Today we have our governor's appointees to the board, and we do have several of them on the agenda, which is GM 684, 685, and 687 members as well. Before I call on our nominees, the chair would want to at least advise our nominees today. And in our discussion, members and the nominees have been good about communicating as well. I've interviewed all of them, and I'm sure they have reached out to you as well. And our duty here as well is to advise and consent, whether it's in the affirmative or none. So I just want to let our nominees know as well your mission. And you have been briefed or will be briefed by the chair as well. And just a note for us here on the committee as well, that we hope that you will continue to read, if you haven't already, your role about the DLNR mission statement. And the chair would just want to add that, you know, the DLNR mission, and that's one thing the chair case has always included in testimonies on any issues before us. What is the statement? And this is to enhance, protect, conserve, and manage Hawaii's unique and limited natural, cultural, and historic resources held in public trust for current and future generations of the people of Hawai'i and its visitors in partnership with others from the public and private sectors. Also, our advice to you is hopefully you'll get to read Article 11 on Section 1 on what the benefits in the future generations are protected by a constitution as well. Okay, we will proceed then. We do have one of our members, the GM 684, is having some Maui airline difficulties getting here, of some delays. She is on her way somewhere. So we will proceed with GM 685 and this is submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Land and Natural Resources, GM Riley Smith, for a term to expire June 30th, 2026. And this is GM 685. Chair Case, on behalf of GM 685, Riley Smith.
Thank you, Chair Inouye, Vice Chair Keith Agaran, and members of the committee. Thank you for hearing the governor's nominees to the Board of Land and Natural Resources. We want to testify, the Department of Land and Natural Resources wants to testify in strong support in the nomination of Riley Smith to the Board of Land and Natural Resources. He brings a very big wealth of land management expertise and engineering and planning as well. He does his work in particular in Kona on Hawai'i Island. And so he has great expertise in managing large properties And his engineering background will also serve well in managing impacts from sea level rise. He's got very extensive community service in his background. He's really quite experienced in public service, and we're grateful for that. With the Native Hawaiian Chamber of Commerce, Leeward Planning Conference, and a nonprofit Department of Hawaiian Homelands group, Na Kupa'a o Kuhio Board. So he's also been serving on the Hawaii Island Na'alahele Advisory Council. So he's got good experience there with the work of the Forestry and Wildlife Trails Group. And he served in the past on the nominating committee for the Commission on Water Resource Management nominees. He's a graduate of University of Hawaii and University of Southern California and of Kamehameha schools here close by. So we're very honored to have his volunteer for service. So thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Okay, Chair, just before we continue on, can you explain to our committee as well, because this is an unusual first time that I've been here as well, that we have 5 to advise and consent.
Yes.
So can you just shortly explain the different facets of the pick of the nominees in different phases that they must represent according to?
Certainly. So by statute, there are 4 board members that represent, that are from each county: Kauai County, Oahu County, Maui Nui, and Hawaii Island, and then 2 at large plus the chair. Their terms are staggered, and it just is so 2 of them actually started already as interim nominees, subject to your confirmation. So Member Canto started last July, and Member Barnes, who you'll hear from on Monday, started in January. And then also Member Yoon, Kaivi Yoon, who you'll hear from on Monday, started before also, and he's going on his 2nd term.
They represent your different category that you have, like one needs to be, of course,
so we do need to ensure expertise in Native Hawaiian cultural expertise and also in conservation. Those are not designated seats. We just have to ensure that we have that representation on the board. The designated seats are the county seats and the at-large seats. Yeah. Okay.
That's good to know as well, and that we all recognize that that's why they're in different professions.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Okay, Ed Sniffen, DOT, Transportation. Okay, anyway, he sends communication in support. Susan Leloy, are you on Zoom? Okay, she sends communication in support. Leimana Demati.
Aloha, Chair Ingles,
Aloha.
Vice Chair Keith Agron, and members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be able to sit here to strongly support Riley Smith Governor Message 685. You have my written testimony before you, but what I would like to add is that besides his expertise in land use, which Chair Keith so eloquently described, he is also very, very knowledgeable in the different moku on the island, particularly Kohala and Kona, large land districts. But because he's also Native Hawaiian and is a mahi'ai, he understands the importance of the different ecosystems and environment of each separate moku and ahupua'a. So we're very fortunate that he's willing to serve on the land board and strongly support his nomination. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nicole Galassie, testifying for the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. Nicole, are you there in Zoom land? Okay, she also sends testimony in support. And members, we do have support for Mr. Riley. We have 87 cents in support. There's 14 in opposition and 1 in comments as well. Mr. Smith, Riley. Hey, aloha. Welcome to the Capitol.
All right, aloha. Chair Inouye, Vice Chair Agran, Keith Agran, and members of the Water and Land Committee, thank you for allowing me to be here and to be available to answer any questions you might have about serving on the Board of Land and Natural Resources. I've submitted my letter of interest, resume, and bio. It provides a lot of information. I've spoken with each of you, and I think I've answered all your immediate questions. If there's anything that I can clarify or respond to, I'm happy to do that while I'm here. I know that some testimony has been provided, so I'm happy to be available to clarify any concerns you might have.
Good. Members, any questions of Mr. Riley? Senator Misalucha.
Aloha, Mr. Smith.
Aloha.
So in your questionnaire, you alluded to the point that in your day job as in Lanikai or Lanikau properties, as well as Palani Ranch, and your other community involvement, there could periodically be conflicts of interest that may come up, and either actual or perception. So could you kind of elaborate on that, provide maybe examples or maybe details on those potential conflicts in recent past?
Sure, happy to. So I think the two issues of a conflict of interest, one is when there's a clear conflict, whether there's some kind of financial benefit that myself or my family might incur if I were to vote on something that there was a clear conflict. In that situation, I would recuse myself from voting. I would identify the conflict and I would exit the room during the deliberation of that item. And then when that one is done, I would re-enter the room and join the board. Sometimes conflicts are not clear. Sometimes it could be just a perception. In those kind of situations in the past, what I've done is I'll ask either the Attorney General or Corporation Counsel for their opinion, disclose the gray area that I think could be perceived as a conflict. I would ask the other members, the chair, as well as the other members of the land board, what their thoughts, if they perceive that that is a clear conflict. If it's a gray area, I would likely recuse myself from voting. I'm currently on the Liquor Commission on Hawai'i Island. The company I work for owns some income-producing properties in Kailua Village. Sometimes there might be licensees that are tenants of the lands that we own. And so clearly on those types of issues, I recuse myself from voting on those matters.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, so having said that, you have the agendas in advance. So you will already know. And so hopefully that the discussion you'll be speaking to the chair and she'll be happy to advise you as to, how you should move forward as well. And also if in the event, because she's been in this business for quite some time and recognizing that in the event there's certainly conflict, she'll give you a good sound advice. To
Absolutely.
carry forward, and that's her role.
Okay.
So
Maybe if I can just add something too. So Dwayne Kanuha, who's a close friend of ours, used to be the chair of the Land Use Commission. And one of the things he always told me is you always need to preserve the integrity of any decision that a board makes. And he always advised me that if you're not sure, then you should recuse. Because if something were to pass and then an issue would be raised later, it would possibly impact whether that decision is valid because maybe I shouldn't have voted. So I think that's when you have to err on the side of caution and not go into a gray area and participate in something where it's unclear whether there might be a conflict or not.
Okay. Any further discussion? Yes, Senator Revere.
Okay. Hi, Riley. How are you?
Hi. Good.
Great. So after we spoke yesterday, I did have a chance to go through the testimony was submitted publicly. And so there's a few questions that were
Sure.
raised here and I figured it's our job to ask them. You were vice president of Waimana Enterprises. You were or are?
I was between 2007 and 2009.
Okay. And was that during a period in which the Sandwich Island was involved in, well, Albert He, I guess, went to jail for some malfeasance with Sandwich Island. So the statement here is that you were president of Waimana and one of the subsidiaries was Sandwich Island. Is that
That's an
true or
accurate statement.
partially true, or what do you know of what can you say about that situation?
So I worked for Waimana Enterprises from actually twice, once in 2002 to about 2005, and then again in 2007 to 2009. In my last employment there, I ran the statewide submarine fiber optic network that connected all the Department of Hawaiian Homeland's tracks. I was an employee of the company. Albert He's issues with the IRS surfaced in 2015 or 2016. And those issues surfaced because he's an owner of the company, okay? He ran into some accounting financial disclosure issues. He was charged, he was convicted. He served his time in the criminal justice system. He's been released for about 2 years. We're high school classmates. He continues to be a good friend of mine. I had no ownership interest in the company at all.
Okay, so, okay, thank you. So, okay, it was a subsidiary doing a part of the work. He was involved with that. No, it wasn't a subsidiary. They
he
were
was
the
the-
contractors of the company
He was
doing the work.
the owner of the company.
Yeah.
I was an employee that ran the $150 million construction project that put terrestrial and submarine fiber that connected the 5 major Hawaiian islands.
And is that project complete? Or is it
We
still-
finished it on time, on budget in 2009. And that's when I started working for Laniha Properties.
Got it. Thank you. Sharon, if you don't mind, I'd like to just
Continue.
ask a couple of general questions. I'll ask these kind of generally of everybody that I spoke with. And things that we touched on yesterday too. You know, for stream diversions, what is your kind of philosophy on the priority of water uses and diversion for hopefully beneficial uses? How do you see that?
You know, rather than generalize and give you an opinion on something that hasn't come before the board, that I don't have the staff recommendation, that I don't have the facts on to render a decision, I'd rather not speculate on how I might support or not support something without all of the facts and everything, and knowing exactly what the land board's jurisdiction is on that matter.
Okay, but you recognize there are priorities of to the water.
Yes.
Right, and then the in-stream flow standard, of course, is the highest priority before we get to diversions.
And I believe that typically comes under the Commission on Water Resource Management rather than the land board.
Well, but it ultimately may come up to you guys for decision on revocable permits or approvals of taking water. Yeah.
Possibly. And I think that's why it's important to understand what the issue is that would come before the land board and what the staff recommendation and the research is, and to listen to the testimony from the public on their concerns about any issue that comes before the land board.
Okay, great. Thank you. Community-based fisheries. What is your knowledge or thoughts of that as far as managing shorelines and the value or lack of value, or how do we, again, back to a question we were talking about yesterday, how do you decide between conflicting interests? Do you have any thoughts on community-based fisheries?
So in general, I don't think this is an item that may come before the land board in the near future, but I am aware of work that some of the Kama'aina families that live in the Kapulehu area have done in the area of Hualalai. Reggie Lee, Hannah Springer, a couple other folks that I know have voluntarily imposed self-restrictions on taking of certain species in the Kapulehu area. And I think they kind of called it the try-wait thing. Let's do a moratorium for 10 years. Let's let the fisheries replenish. And I think it's overall been successful. And it's self-monitored by the locals rather than getting DoCare or others involved. And it's the Kama'aina families from that area that have monitored excessive depletion of the resources along the coastline. So I think there's a lot of
So you might be
opportunities.
supportive of the locally based decision-making for that resource?
Well, I know that that's worked, okay? And typically, I think when government gets involved in things, typically government will make decisions because they've had bad experiences in the past. So they'll over-regulate something where maybe you might have a small issue, and instead of addressing the small issue, they put some blanket regulations that restrict everything instead of focusing on the specific issue that needs to be addressed. And in this kind of local-based management system, they address how they were raised in that area, how they protected the resource. You don't catch a coolie year-round. You don't catch mullet year-round. You catch it when it's plentiful. And then you don't try to, if you're having a luau or something like that, you don't serve opihi if you're going to deplete the resource. So what you need to do is you need to balance supply and regeneration.
So it
of the
sounds like you do
species.
support the locally based.
Well, especially when it
the
works.
EK and the experience.
Yeah, when it works, it's great.
Okay.
But and when it's bottom up management, then there's better buy-in, and it's not like you're using a hammer to enforce things. You're using a carrot to encourage people to do what's sustainable for generations. So in concept, I support those kind of efforts.
Okay. And final question then, is a land division. That's, the legislature often harp, on the department more maybe than the board, but for, more revenues from the state lands or, revocable permits or getting things in order, managing the land division maybe needs a lot more staff or what, any ideas on that? Because ultimately you make decisions based on their recommendations.
In general, I support having a consistent method of administering land dispositions in the state. To me, it's inappropriate when you might treat one lessee one way, one revocable permit individual a different way, a licensee a different way. I think if you're in business and you're trying to utilize state lands, whether under any of those dispositions, you need certainty so that you can reinvest in the infrastructure to make sure that it works and that you're able to pay the state an appropriate fee for the use of those lands. But the lessee or licensee needs to have certainty as to their duration on that property so they can project if I'm going to improve the water system or the fencing or anything like that, that they can make a reasonable return on their investment.
So if they have a lease for 55 years, say, or 35, whatever the term may be, as it expires, their value in that land is diminishing, right? Because the state owns the land. And so as you come close, because this is an issue that comes up all the time. What do we do when we get down to the 10 or 15 years remaining and they want to recapitalize on that? Should we just allow them to renegotiate, or should they come back in and maybe reopen up their lease?
Well, in the private sector, when I have a lessee that has a long-term lease and I have a short-term remaining, I want that lessee to be able to reinvest in the property to make it worthwhile. If they're successful, then the state can be successful. You have a tenant that's going to pay you the rent that you're entitled to. If you let it get down to a year or 2 years, unless there's certainty on the term, no business person is going to reinvest in upkeeping the property or improving the
That's correct, but
infrastructure.
for the state fiduciary, or as the landowner, you don't want to just go forever at low rent. You need to reappraise and.
Well, hopefully
reprice
the
things.
terms of the disposition include renegotiation terms, whether it be by appraisal or mediation or arbitration, so that you can come to some agreement and extend the term as appropriate at market rates.
Okay, thanks. It's more of a policy question, I guess, from our side than yours. You have to handle them as they come to you. But I appreciate that. I just wanted to ask those questions.
Sure.
Be thorough. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I can see our senator has been busy and our committee as well, because this year and the past years, we're inundated with requests and bills before us with this particular issue as well. Yes, and thank you, Senator. Any further discussions on Mr. Smith? I do want to add that I believe that the department, I think with the quality of your expertise as well, will fill the position as just, and we thank the governor for for sending your name down.
Thank you.
To this committee for the advice and consent from the legislature.
Thank
as
you.
well. Thank you.
If I can just make one comment, I just wanted to acknowledge Chair Case. I've probably been on about 3 or 4 Zoom calls with her. I met with her in person. She's oriented me on sunshine law, conflicts of interest, and explained all the obligations and responsibilities of the land board. So if I am confirmed, I clearly understand what the obligation and the kuleana of the land board is. So I just want to acknowledge her help in getting me up to speed on all that.
She's right on it, and there's a role for all of you. It's an extensive commission. It's one that the dedication to this position is important to the state and to the people of Hawaii as well. And that's why hopefully that, and I did mention then looking at the statutes is important as well. And I think the chair has her guidelines as to the education when the new nominees come in to be confirmed. Okay.
Right.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We'll call on our next DM. Thank you.
Okay.
And I can continue to remain here as well. We'll move on then to GM 687. And this is submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Land and Natural Resources, gubernatorial nominee Karen Ono for a term to expire June 30th, 2024. Chair Case.
Thank you, Chair Inouye, Vice Chair Keith Agaran, and members of the committee. Suzanne Case with the Department of Land and Natural Resources. You have a written testimony in strong support of the governor's nomination of Karen Ono to the Board of Land and Natural Resources. Ms. Ono is from the island of Kauai, and she has served as an associate executive for the Board of Realtors for 42 years. So as such, she has a deep understanding of land transactions and also of the island of Kauai. She has also extensive public service and business service, Chamber of Commerce on Kauai, and has grown up on Kauai, and so she is nominated to represent the island of Kauai on the board. And once again, we are very honored that she is willing to have her name put forward for your consideration. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Ahumoku, Demana, Damatu.
Aloha again, Chair.
Aloha.
Inouye, Vice Chair Keith Agaran, and members of the committee. Ahumoku stands in strong support for this nominee. In speaking to the people of Kauai, she's well known for her community work, and I know she has a strong position in administrative duties, but it was her community work that resonated with us. People have told me that she is fair, has integrity, and focuses on her work, which I think is what you need on the land board. So thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'll be ready for questions if needed.
Thank you, Demana. Okay. Members, for this, we did receive quite a number of communications in support. 19 support, opposition 3, and 1 comment as well. And may we introduce our GM 687, Karen Ono. Aloha. Thank you for making time with us. I know for the neighbor islands, it's not easy to get on a plane and come here, but we're happy that you're here with us this morning.
Thank you, Chair Inouye and Vice Chair Kitagaran and members of the committee. I'm a little nervous right now. I'm normally on the other side of the table. This is the first time I'm on this side of the
Feel
table.
comfortable, yeah. You're-
Okay, so
Doing well.
born and raised on Kauai and working with the Realtor Organization for 42 years. I have presented a lot of educational courses so that realtors, the public, and the government are aware of what's going on, not only on the local level, but also on the state level and on the federal level. So it's a wide range of knowledge and education that I put out to the members. I've also served on the Kauai Tourism Strat Plan Committee. This is when they were bringing up the K Beach. So I was part of that group as well. I also served on the Kauai Tax Review Committee Board of Directors on Kauai for a couple of years, and that was earlier in 2009, 10. So I have actually participated in various organizations.
All right. Any questions of our nominee, Senator? Freitas? Sure.
Thanks. I'll do the. Hi,
Hi.
had fun talking to you yesterday. So
you.
same series of questions. I wanted to just, for the record in the hearing here, let's talk about, stream diversions, your thoughts on the priorities of water. And it is a controversial issue.
It's a controversial issue throughout the state, and I know that happens a lot on Kauai and in Maui. I think, like what Riley said, everything has to be put in the front of us as far as the facts, the research, before we can actually make our decision. I mean, I know there will be conflicts of interest, and I will make sure that I would recuse myself as well, and be really conscious about any discussions with anybody. I am aware of the Sunshine Law, so.
So do you recognize that there are priorities
Yes.
for the water before diversion, right? You
Yes,
gotta have the
yes.
in-stream flow standards.
Uh-huh.
Diversion has to be for a beneficial
Mhm.
use and not just for commercial use necessarily.
Yes.
The community-based fisheries, I think Kauai actually has a successful
Kauai,
community-based
yeah.
fisheries. Can you tell
Kauai-
us a little bit about your understanding of that?
Kauai just recently is working on a revitalization of Alakoko Fish Pond. And we meaning the community, and I have also expressed interest that I'm going to be volunteering with them, where they're going to start producing programs for the community and also in trying to increase the food population and species. And by KA Beach down in Tunnels, we do have that restriction where you go back with the old methods of fishing the ancient way. So the people are aware of that. And I think that our population of the species are starting to increase, more so after the flooding and the pandemics, when people were really aware of everything.
So would you deem that a success then, the community-based fisheries program up on the North Shore?
Yes,
It's working because of again,
yes, it's working.
sometimes going back to the old ways is not bad, huh?
It's a little harder to catch, but it's working.
And land division, we talked about that a little bit yesterday too. What were your thoughts on leases, as leases come due, and how to revitalize our lands and get them for the best use for the state?
Okay, so on land leases, I know that there's fixed terms on the leases. And when you have it extended out for 50 years, many times that at the end of the 50 year, it doesn't match what the market rate would be. And I think that needs to be looked at a little bit more so that over the years, it's fair for everyone. But we can't make it so strong or so discouraging that people who are leasing the land and growing food or whatever the items may be that is income producing isn't able to maintain the sustainability.
about a business? If somebody creates a business, and they're renting commercial space,
Mhm.
and then their kids grow up and, the parents are now aging out, so the kids want to continue to stay there for the next 30 years, but they're already 40 years into their 55-year lease. Do they have a right to stay on that property, or is that how do you
Okay,
reconcile that?
I wouldn't say it's a right, but if the family, the kids and the family actually wants to continue the business and can successfully continue it, then they be given some kind of opportunity. Maybe not a really long lease.
So do you extend the lease, or do you open it up for a new?
I would
New review as
I would-
the
yeah, I
person
would do a new
responsible for the land.
probably both. And I would look at the department to come up with, input and information before saying, hey, let's go this way instead. So I'm gonna be relying a lot on the department and their research to back.
I think we sometimes have a lot of, we have a lot of sympathy and empathy for the businesses that are succeeding and they've been going, and you don't want them to fold, but at the same time, you have that fiduciary
Yes.
for all of the people. of the
Exactly.
state, and so sometimes it can be hard.
And then again, with that too, you gotta look at, does it impact the shoreline? I mean, because some of them are businesses that are right in the shoreline, what is the impacts on that as well? So there's a bigger picture than just saying, okay, let's open up the leases or let's renew their lease. I think we need to look at the bigger picture.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank
Chair.
you. Senator Lisa Lucia.
Aloha, Karen.
Aloha.
So 42 years is a long time with the Board of Realtors, right? And by the very nature of that industry, it can be pro-development, right? So I'm kind of curious whether you've given thought about the instances where there might be a conflict between the development as well as land preservation. So do you think you're able to distance yourself, from that and be able to really do your fiduciary duty, considering that for the longest of time, you've been advocating more on the development
Yes.
side?
Actually, what we've been doing as the Realtor organization is trying to educate people, whether it be pro or opposition, just educating them so that they know the facts, because what we think might be pro might be the opposite. So in my sense, I would disqualify myself if there was ever a conflict. Yes, I believe in, good ethics, and I've had to sanction a lot of realtors who weren't following the code of ethics. So I know how that can be. And I know the heat that we come under as well. So thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
just-
Senator Barbaron.
Just to be clear, although you were executive director of the Board of Ethics, you were never a realtor. You don't hold a license, right?
No.
So you don't have any interest in, except for maybe your family property. So really what you're saying is you managed, you administered the Board of Realtors, but you never had that kind of conflict where you were formally advocating for
No.
just what the
Yeah,
realtors
yeah.
want, right?
You're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you as well for accepting the nomination from the governor and the chair as well. And if you can have a seat,
Mhm.
we will continue on the agenda item. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
And I want to say thank you to Suzanne Case for literally helping us get through this process. I know that she will keep us in tab and we're going to be right on it.
Well, the timing has been great because, we have the 5 of you new ones, but there were already 2 of you that already has come on board even without the confirmation from the legislature. So you've had the sense of, prepping and getting initially on as well with the procedures. And so at least it kind of relieves, the rest of the nominees as well, like Riley and our 2 that's coming on board. So that's pretty much a little relief in a sense. So at least you were already prepped in the meantime.
So I want to thank all of you guys, and if you have any questions, you know how to reach me.
Thank you
Thank
very much.
you.
Thank you. Okay, members, since we have our GM 684 somehow with the plane delays, we do have an agenda that I'd like to continue one bill, but I don't think I need to get out and come back in because it's the same agenda, right, staff? So members, we'll await the arrival of GM 684. Let's proceed with hearing HB 1669 House Draft 1, and this is relating to sea level rise adaptation. This requires the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development to establish a pilot program to develop a Waikiki adaptation and resilience plan to address climate change and sea level impacts in the Waikiki Special District. It requires reports to the legislature as well as making an appropriation. DLNR, Michael, you taking care of this issue today. Good to see you. Thank you.
Good morning or afternoon, I guess, Chair Noe, Vice Chair Keith Agarine, committee members. Michael Kane, on behalf of the Department of Land and Natural Resources, we stand in support of this measure. We've done a number of studies, macro level studies over the past decade addressing the impacts of coastal erosion. This is an opportunity to apply this on a community level, and our hope is that it can provide a model to other communities in the state. Our one recommendation is that the bill consider including the request or including in the final report an implementation strategy. And our concern is that we've seen a lot of plans that look great, but don't lay the groundwork for the next step. And I am available for questions.
Thank you very much. Mary Alice Evans from the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. Mary Alice, aloha.
Aloha, Chair and Vice Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for letting us provide testimony on this measure. And I see in the on Zoom a number of our stakeholders for this pilot project. And I want to acknowledge Luke Meyer's testimony, in which he recommends that the bill incorporate language to align the local hazard mitigation planning with statewide hazard mitigation efforts if the legislature decides to pass this measure. So we commend the legislature for its continued recognition of sea level rise as a climate emergency. And we look forward to working with the stakeholders on a pilot study. We do recommend an amendment that would amend page 3, line 16 to say pilot project where the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, deleting the words a working group convened by, because we will certainly be working with all of the stakeholders. That's the whole point of this. But when you put a working group into statute, it becomes subject to Chapter 92, and it makes it much harder and slower to get the work done. We also want to acknowledge that typically this would be a county-led project, and we have been speaking with the county on it, the county and city and county of Honolulu, and look forward to working with them on this and ensure that the outcomes are consistent and complementary to their county level activities. And I also want to acknowledge Rick Agate from the Waikiki Improvement Association. Rick is a former boss of mine, and so I always respect his judgment when it comes to working with the business community as well as the residents of Waikiki. So thank you all, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Mary Alice. Kaema, Luke Myers, aloha.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair. My name is Luke Myers, the Administrator of the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency. HIEMA stands on our written testimony offering comments on 1669. We do believe that there is a lot of connective tissue with hazard mitigation planning on the resiliency front, and whether it's through the FEMA or state, county or state approved mitigation plans, we look forward to being part of this process as we move forward. Available for further discussion necessary. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Board of Water Supply, Kathleen Mitchell, or representative.
Aloha,
Aloha.
Chair and Vice Chair and members of the committee. Yes, Kathy Mitchell with the Board of Water Supply. We stand on our written testimony in support.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions of water supply? Rick Agan, aloha. Is Rick available? Aloha, I see you there, Rick.
I'm here.
All right.
Got to master all my technical buttons to push and stuff, but thank you, Senator, for hearing this bill, and we certainly appreciate all the effort being put into this to this planning endeavor by the various stakeholders. One of the things that's really important as we move through this process of planning how to deal with climate change and sea level rise and the like through, with the government and the community, is to let the private sector know how we are going to deal with these issues, because that enables the private sector in their planning and when they're looking at a new project to be consistent with what the community is thinking. So I think this is a very important pilot, and I think it'll only begin this whole process around the state of dealing with these issues as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, we have testimonies as well from 10 others and no opposition for comments. Mary Alice, can you come on? I have a question for you.
Yes, Chair.
This is a pilot project, and oftentimes we've seen working groups, pilot projects come before us this year. And I do know that several, we've changed the submittals of the status reports. And I'm just wondering, since this is a pilot program and such a large, to me, this plan on climate change, sea level rise, I can't see how we can conclude a pilot program in less, actually, because your report is due, the preliminary, in 2023, but then I think it ends at the convening section of 2024. Is that enough time? To me, I think it's stretching, but I believe the appropriation is, we're only looking at our fiscal current year of 2022, 2023. So I guess if you're not, you haven't completed the plan or the contract or whatever, I assume that you will probably ask for an extension and continue on. So I'm wondering though that if you need a little more time, but leave the appropriation for this fiscal year, and if anything, then make the additional request up until then. I just feel that this is such an important program or project because we've been dealing with this annually. So just your thoughts.
Chair, thank you for that. I think the preliminary report will give us an opportunity to report back to the legislature on the progress making. I think by 2024, we will know if we have an implementation strategy, as Michael Kane from DLNR noted in his testimony. If we're still looking at finding that community vision that the business community wants for a little more certainty on how Waikiki might deal with sea level rise and groundwater inundation, then I think at that time, our coastal zone management program, which is the program that is going to be carrying out most of the duties, will come to the legislature and let you know where we are.
Okay, all right. Yeah, Senator, Mr. Lucio,
Actually,
is your question to Mary Alice?
Mary Alice and
Yep.
probably Rick Eggett too.
Sure.
Aloha to you both. So, Rick, in your testimony, you pointed out about a UH research project that's ongoing, and it's about long-term visioning, climate adaptation of the buildings and landscape in Waikiki. What is the timing of that project and where is it at? And I guess I'm trying to align it as a follow-up to Senator Inoi's question about this particular pilot study. How does that align?
Yeah, I am only a participant in that effort, so I can't give you their exact timeline off the top of my head. I don't know, maybe Mary Alice has a better comment there. But I do agree with what the chair is saying. I think that we are looking at a 2-year time frame for this effort. And I think we should be able at that point at least to provide a preliminary report. And then if we ask for an extension to continue the work, I think that would be a time to look at that and ask the legislature for that extension. So I think the chair characterized it very well. And I think that that is, and because we sort of have a head start, if you will, as Senator, as you point out, since the university has kind of started this work. University's project, though, is kind of much more
Broad.
Yeah, and so it's like it'll be very useful in this effort, no question. And we've all been working together in setting this up. So it does give us a jump on the process because it's been going on all year. And in fact, I think it started last year. And so I believe that the 2-year time frame will certainly give us enough time to get back to the legislature with at least some preliminary findings.
Further thoughts, Mary Alice?
No, I agree with Rick, and so I'll leave it there.
Actually, you only have 1.5 years because this is upon approval, so you're going to
July.
After July 1st, you're gonna have, by the time you organize, you're gonna have less than 6 months, and then we're already into 2023. And so you'll have that full year, and then you're presenting it to the legislature in January of 2024. So that's a concern I have, but I'm glad that discussion is there, that you're prepared. If there's a continuance, you will just have to proceed then. And we all know we'll have a new administration. So hopefully that will continue to protect this legislation and continue the work. Okay, any further discussions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, Senator Agaran, for.
This is probably for Mary Alice and maybe for DLNR. I have a question about the flexibility that you're going to have in the plan that comes out, because I mean, we're talking about Waikiki, which is a very specific place with some specific resources that it can call on, the business community, the hotel owners and the like, that other landowners on the coast throughout the islands would not be able to. So what's the realistic view of whether or not the plan that comes out for Waikiki could be a model for elsewhere? Because I just can't see, landowners on the coastlines of certain parts of Maui where it's not a resort. There's, there are long-time Kama'aina and local families living there. They're not going to be able to afford the kinds of, adaptions that might be called for in Waikiki.
Completely agreed, Senator. So I think the pilot nature of this would apply to probably resort areas where there are those resources. And then say, for instance, residents of Ka'ava on Oahu, where they have a highway that is similar to yours, that is already seeing, storm damage, high wave damage. That's a very different type of community. And I think as planners, we would approach that differently. It would be, that we wouldn't assume that there would be additional resources there, but we would also assume that there would need to be a lot more face-to-face discussion about what kinds of changes they could accept. We've talked about managed retreat in one of our publications, but it's not the only option, and it may not be the option that individual communities would select if they were given that choice. So I think this is an important pilot study for some of our communities, but not all. This is definitely not a one-size-fits-all.
That's what I'm hoping, because I wouldn't want to see a one-size-fits-all policy set down by the state, or even by the counties, if the counties, to the extent the counties have authority to do some of those things. And I think also DLNR for the coastal lands that it manages.
Totally agreed, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Lucha.
DLNR. Yeah.
Michael?
So Haima, Michael, said something about how this mitigation planning should be aligned with the statewide hazard mitigation efforts. And is there specific language that you think should be added in the bill that would point to that? Because there's also something about maximizing federal funding that I'm intrigued about.
I would have to defer to Haima on how to maximize that funding. In terms of this project, I think OPSD is going to have to reach out to a number of people, not just Haima, and engage multiple plans. So I think as long as we leave that flexibility open, we don't need to name each plan. And if I could follow up to Vice Chair Keith Agron's question.
Sure.
I would not anticipate that the Waikiki plan could be transferred to other communities. Waikiki is pretty unique, but it will address, the process will address many of the challenges we face. Specifically, how does the state and the county governments come together to address regional planning? So the plans will be different, but we will be participating and watching to see what we can learn from bringing the different parts of government together.
Thank you.
Thank
Chair,
you.
can I have Haima?
Sure. Yes.
Luke.
Luke Myers. Hi, Emma. Are you still on?
Hi, Luke.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
Good afternoon.
yeah, Mary Alice pointed out how important it is to align. And now you said it in your testimony too. Can you kind of elaborate on that, how important that is, and what's the impact on maximizing federal funding?
Yeah, so under the Code of Federal Regulations with FEMA, we have a requirement, we've had a requirement for a number of years for state and local hazard mitigation plans. So each of our 4 counties has a hazard mitigation plan, and we have a state hazard mitigation plan, which was adopted and approved in 2018, and we've just started the update process for 2023. With those hazard mitigation plans, there are projects that are identified that could tie to this resiliency effort or others that have been identified across the state. But those projects need to be linked back to their approved mitigation planning products to be eligible for FEMA assistance or assistance under the flood management assistance program. So we just wanted to ensure, and we've had a lot of conversations with DLNR and with Mary Alice's team, that as these resiliency efforts stand up and new planning documents are done and strategies, that we make some of those connections so that federal funding may be available either pre or post an incident for overall hazard reduction, ma'am.
Can we assume that that would be something you would be doing anyway, so we don't need to write that into the bill?
We believe it's important to make that connection between these products that are out there. What we don't want to see happen is an effort develops, a plan is put in place, and a strategy is adopted, and then there's an expectation that, as an example, FEMA assistance will be available for that impacted community. By making that connection between the local and state hazard mitigation planning and this and other resiliency efforts clearly provides that intent from the ledge or from others to go down that path, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any further discussions? Members, we do see our GM 684, but let's do this. Chair's we have a recommendation already for HB 1669. Chair would like for us to take a vote on this measure, and then we'll get back to GM 684 for Doreen Canto's advice and consent. And so let's proceed then with HB 1669 House Draft 1 relating to sea level rise. But the recommendation is to pass with these amendments. We'd like to adopt DLNR's proposed amendment to include the implementation strategy as a component of the plan, which shall be included in the final report due to the legislature no later than 20 days prior to the convening of the regular session of 2024. We'd like to adopt OPSD's proposed amendments to remove the working group and add one exempt FTE position to OPSD to ensure the activities identified within the Waikiki adaptation and resilience plan are carried out accordingly. We'd like to insert the blank appropriation to fund the position, the FTE position, and we'll perfect the effective date to July 1st, 2022. Any further discussions on the recommendations? Hearing none, Vice Chair for the vote on HB 1669 House Draft 1, Chair votes aye.
Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Lucio.
Aye.
Secretary Revere.
Aye.
Rivera is excused. Recommendation adopted.
Thank you. We'll proceed then, and I'm glad our GM 684 submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Land and Natural Resources gubernatorial nominee Doreen Canto for a term to expire June 30th, 2025. And we're sorry, members and those in Zoom land, we did have some travel difficulties with the airlines. We're blame the airlines this time. Okay, and we're happy that she was able to come in and get relieved while we complete our agenda items. So Chair Suzanne Case.
Thank you, Chair Inouye, Vice Chair Keith Agaran, members of the committee, Suzanne Case with the Department of Land and Natural Resources. Thank you for hearing the nomination of Doreen Napua Canto, Governor's Message GM 684 for the Board of Land and Natural Resources. The department stands in strong support of Ms. Canto's nomination. She has over 20 years of community service. She's really Kekeokaina of Maui, very, very knowledgeable on Maui matters. And she is got lots and lots of community service. She's very local, from the very local, such as service on the Kula Community Association to statewide, having served 3 years on the Hawaiian Homes Commission. She's been on the board as an interim nominee since last July. So I've had the pleasure of working with her for, I think, 8 months now. And she's a very, very warm person, very accessible to her constituents, always wants to hear people's points of view, and is a very highly respected member of the community. So with her knowledge and her style and her her community service and her roots in Maui, I feel she's an excellent nominee for the Board of Land and Natural Resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Maui County Council member Keani Rollins had requested to be here in Zoom land. Aloha.
Aloha, Committee Chair Inouye, Keith, Vice Chair Keith Agaran, and honorable committee members. Ovau Okiani Rollins Fernandez. I'm the Vice Chair of the Maui County Council, and I'm testifying as an individual council member today. Mahalo for this opportunity to testify in strong support of GM 84, the nomination of Doreen Napua Kanto to serve as the representative for Maui County on the Board of Land and Natural Resources. I want to also thank the governor for her nomination, as well as Chair Case. Mahalo, Chair Inouye, for reading the mission of the DLNR to reiterate the role and responsibilities of those on BLNR. I can tell you with certainty that from the first day on the board, Ms. Kanto has been a champion for the people and the environment. I found her to be very responsive to the community's needs and in balancing the various interests presented to her in decision-making. She was a voice to ensure better access to shoreline in South Maui for cultural practices and recreational users. Because of her advocacy, the county will be able to spearhead this effort in South Maui for continued access and parking for Maui residents to better protect their interests. She has continuously made herself available to the community, works really hard to understand all the concerns and issues, and is solution-driven, which I truly appreciate. Earlier, Senator Rivera asked the previous nominee about the community-based fisheries, and the nominee responded that it wouldn't be coming before the board, and I would just like to share that it will. There are several, one from Molokai, one from Kipahulu, one from Miloli'i that will be coming before the BLNR, which are at its different stages in the rulemaking process. But in closing, I urge you to vote to confirm Ms. Kanto today. I would love for her to continue to represent my voice and those of my constituents on the BLNR. Mahalo again for this opportunity to testify.
Mahalo, Councilwoman. Thank you very much. We have testifying for Mayor Victorino is Terry Gorman available? Yes, you need to unmute yourself, Terry.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
We sure can. Proceed.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Terry Freitas Gorman. Aloha to Chair Inouye, Vice Chair Keith Agaran, and members of the Land and Water Committee. I am working with Mayor Victorino in his communications office, but I've known Doreen Pua Kanto since 2007. I met her 15 years ago at an event that was hosted by the Maui Native Hawaiian Chamber of Commerce. When I met Pua at first, she totally impressed me with her excitement and passion for the mission of the Chamber of Commerce. And her excitement was contagious enough for me to become a member of the chamber. And after attending a few networkers, I got very interested in the chamber and was eventually invited to serve as a member of the board of directors during her term as president. That gave me an opportunity to see her leadership, talent, and action. During her term as president of the Maui Native Hawaiian Chamber of Commerce, the organization grew in both membership and influence because of her deep commitment to inclusivity. As Chair Case mentioned, Pua, I'm sorry, I call her Pua, but Ms. Kanto is always willing to listen to the opinions of others, including and especially those that she may not agree with at first. She's always open-minded, and I've seen her reconsider an opinion based on feedback she's gotten from people. As Kekioka'aina Native Hawaiian, she has a lifelong relationship with the lands of Maui County and the people, as well as other places throughout the state. And she's always very fair and equitable in her decision-making, and she's also quite thorough in collecting information and studying research that's provided to her, and she goes beyond that and researches things on her own accord. I highly endorse her as a qualified member of the Board of Land and Natural Resources, and I urge this committee to endorse her appointment by Governor Ige this afternoon. And thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Terry, for taking time. Ahamoku Leimana Tamati.
Thank you, and aloha again, Chair Inoue, Vice Chair Keith Agaran, and members of the committee. Ahamoku strongly supports the Hawaii, this nominee, Ms. Canto. When I listened to all of the other people, especially Chair Case, we have kind of touched on all of that in our written testimony before you. What was not mentioned, though, is her knowledge of the 12 different moku of the island and how they're all pretty distinct and individual in the geography, topography, environment, the ecosystem of each one. And that is knowledge that she has of generational knowledge. So that compiled with all of the other attributes that were spoken of makes her a land board member that is uniquely suited because she can walk in two worlds, Native Hawaiian and Western, and do it fairly with dignity and compassion. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you,
to
Leimana.
testify.
Testifying for Hawaii Cattlemen's Council, Nicole Galassie. And she sends testimony in support. Sierra Club of Hawaii, Wayne Tanaka. Aloha.
Good afternoon, Chair Inoue.
Good
Vice Chair
afternoon.
Keith Agaran, members of the committee. Wayne Tanaka for the Sierra Club of Hawaii. We're just, first I think, we want to express our appreciation for the nominees, for their willingness to serve on the Board of Land Natural Resources, which is, in many ways, one of the most important, has one of the most important missions for Hawaii. And as we deal with the effects of climate change and its impacts on our watersheds and our water sources and fisheries and, pretty much every aspect of our way of life, I think their role is going to be more important than ever before. And so, given the nature of the public trust and the differences between what it's like to be a trust agency that has to care about a wide range of interests and balance them fairly as provided for under the law. We just do hope that both the senators and the nominees just kind of take some time to reflect on the the need to maybe consider changes to how things are being done, to take a critical look at historical policies and practices that maybe didn't fully fulfill the public trust in favor of political expediency or bureaucratic expediency. And so we do have some suggested questions in our testimony that we think could help suss out and help people reflect on their commitment to make what might be some difficult decisions, but necessary decisions for our islands as we go forward and as they fulfill their mission. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Wayne. Lucienne Denaye, are you there, Lucienne? Okay, hearing none, members, we have 15 minutes. We will be calling GM 684 up. Please come on up as well, just to let you know, with regards to this nominee, there were 16 communications. We received 2 in opposition and 1 comment as well. Aloha. Yeah, if you feel comfortable in speaking, but keep it on. Yeah, if you can. Otherwise, if you feel uncomfortable when you speak, then you can take it.
I'm fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and be relaxed. Yeah, welcome and sorry for your morning day trying to get here as well. And thank you as well for accepting the governor's nomination and the support from Chair Case. And we're just happy and hopefully that you can share your experience because you were one of the first out of the 5 that started the training already last year. And, you can share that with us, what you have learned so far. And I did share some of the recommendations which you folks already probably have been briefed by the chair, just to make sure that all board members, understand Article 11, Section 1 of the Constitution, and as well as your HRS Chapter 171, which guides the board and also is the vehicle that Chair Case uses, because you can't flounder. There's rules and your role as well with all. So welcome again. Feel relaxed and how you're experiencing your so far member of the board without the confirmation process.
Thank you so much, Chair. First of all, I'd like to, I appreciate the time spent with all four of you within the past month or so. The last being Senator Riviere. And I had hoped to meet with Senator Vivella, but, flight arrangements didn't allow me the opportunity, but thank you for allowing me to be here today. My experience so far to date with this board is a truly rewarding experience. There's a lot to learn still. And in as much as all of the training that's allowable for us to partake in, I look forward to being, having that be a part of my tenure with DLNR. So I look forward to the training that Chair offers to us throughout, as recent as last week. And but no, there's a lot for me to learn, and I embrace the opportunity to do so.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Members, any questions you'd like to share other than our discussions? Senator Revere.
Sure, thank you. Aloha.
Aloha.
Hi, so I've been asking each of the nominees today the same series of questions. Kind of a follow-up on what we talked about yesterday, but just kind of for the record and here in the hearing. So your thoughts on stream diversions, the priorities of water uses. And of course, Maui, you have it's kind of a hot spot for water diversion and controversy, and Maui water, Board of Water Supply needs water from East Maui. And just your thoughts on the whole discussion of priorities of water and diversions.
Well, because of the fact that I cannot disclose specifics regarding it, there's a contested case.
That's fine.
Before us, so if you would allow me to just
Step
stop
away from
there.
that into a higher level discussion then
Yeah,
maybe about your
yeah,
understanding.
would you? Thank you. But thank you for the question. I just want to make it clear that it's just not something that I'm able to respond to at this time.
Not even the in-stream flow standards, the priority that has over diversion, just conceptually?
I don't want to comment on that right now. I want to be sure of myself before I do so, and that comes with a lot of learning and hands-on experience, if you may.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other question then, the land division, I think we talked about that. Ideas or thoughts or, one of the questions we're going around today is when the state has a lease, offers a lease to maybe a commercial tenant or agriculture tenant, as they approach the end of the lease, what do they have a right, or does the state have an obligation to extend that lease for them, or should the state rather open it up for a new lease, or how do we?
My thoughts are, I don't believe the state has an obligation to do that, and given the circumstances and having weighed everything in front of us, I'm sure that an informed decision can be made at that time, but currently right now, I don't believe that the state
So
has an
think of a
obligation.
family that created a business and
Yeah.
40 years, 45 years on, now they've only got 10 years left in the lease. The kids are running the business.
Mhm.
They want to stay there and they want that lease extension. What?
It's a hard call to make. I mean, the state, we want to be able to make sure that whatever revenues come out of this transaction benefits the state. That's the way I look at things.
Ultimately, that's it, isn't it? I mean, we
Yeah.
have the fiduciary
Yeah.
ultimately to all of
And-
the people.
And I'm sympathetic and I have empathy for things of that sort, but at the end of the day, it's basically what's in it, quote unquote, in for the state, state of Hawaii, and that's how I feel.
All right. The third question that everybody gets is the community-based fisheries, what are your thoughts in general of, and it cuts to something we talked about yesterday too, where basically the local community, do they have more influence over the resource management than maybe the higher level state?
I would like to believe the community has a lot to say regarding, that issue. And then again, given the details of what's going to come before us, I'm not saying that it won't come before us. I think that it should,
Do you think it works though, using the, maybe the people that grew up in that area over the last few generations, they have some kind of knowledge of the place?
I do.
Do we value their opinion?
We should.
And take it into serious consideration?
Yeah,
we do.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Just a follow-up.
Yes, Senator Agaran.
Yeah, the questions about the length of leases. I mean, you're limited by what the state law allows, right? So unless the legislature gives the landlord the authority to extend the lease beyond the limits that the law provides, you can't really. I mean, you'd have to follow the law, wouldn't you?
Well, we're bounded by that ruling, correct?
I mean, you can feel empathy for
Yeah, I
the
do.
tenants, but if they're at the end of the allowed legal limits of a state lease, unless the legislature acts, you really can't do anything at that point, can you?
I can't answer that. I'm sorry. It's just something that I'll have to pick up on, but I can't answer that.
All right.
Any further questions or discussions? Thank you very much. And we're happy that you made it in time. Okay, yeah, you're relaxed.
Thank you so
and,
much.
Yeah, you can have a seat. Okay, members, we will just take just a short recess and you can remain here as well. We'll go into recess for now, IT. Good afternoon. The Committee on Water and Land is into decision-making on its agenda of March 18th, Friday. And this is with regards to decision-making of our governor's nominees. So the chair's recommendation will include all of them in one motion. The chair's recommendation is to advise and consent to GM 684. The nominee is Doreen Canto for a term to expire June 30th, 2025. GM 685, this is the advice and consent of the nominee Riley Smith for a term to expire June 30th, 2026. GM 687, the advice and consent to the BLNR, the nominee of Karen Ono for a term to expire June 30th, 2024. Any discussions? Hearing none, Vice Chair, for the votes, Chair goes aye.
Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Misalucha.
Aye.
Senator Revere.
Aye.
Senator Pavella is excused. Recommendation adopted.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations, folks.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. This concludes the Water and Land agenda.